The air in Constantinople, once filled with the clang of swords and desperate prayers, had fallen into a chilling silence, the silence of defeat. For Eleni, a young mother clutching her children, this quiet was more terrifying than the cannon fire that had shattered their world. She had watched the city's legendary walls crumble under Sultan Mehmed's cannons. Her husband, a soldier, had vanished in the final bloody fray, leaving only a memory. Now, the conquerors moved through the streets, their shadows long in the fading light of May 29, 1453. Eleni huddled with her neighbors in the Hagia Sophia, hoping its sacred walls would protect them. But the massive doors splintered, and soldiers poured in, not as chaotic raiders, but as methodical collectors. Eleni's grip tightened on her children as soldiers swept through, assessing and sorting the terrified crowd. A rough hand tore her away from her children. Her son cried out. Her daughter clung to her leg, but another soldier pried them apart. Eleni was shoved into one line, her children into another. There was no negotiation, no plea that could change this. She could only watch, helpless, as her children disappeared into the throng. That final, fleeting glimpse of their faces would haunt her forever. This was not random pillage, it was policy. Her identity as wife and mother was erased in an instant. She was now Pensic, a share of the spoils of war. Her fate, and that of countless others, would be decided not on the battlefield, but in the ledgers of a new empire. The silence over the city was the sound of one world ending, and another, cold, organized, and merciless, beginning. The conqueror's victory was not just military, but total. The systematic destruction of families, the erasure of identities. For Eleni, and for so many others, this was the true cost of conquest. The pain of that last glimpse would never fade. The Ottoman Empire is remembered for its military might. Janissaries, grand sieges, and sultans, whose names echo through history. But their true genius lay in what happened after the battles, the transformation of conquest into a system. The Ottomans were not just warriors, they were bureaucrats, applying meticulous planning to the management of conquered peoples. The treatment of women and children was not a byproduct of war, but a deliberate state-sanctioned policy. Human beings became resources, cataloged, assessed, and distributed with chilling efficiency. The empire developed protocols for enslavement and assimilation, complete with official records and distribution channels. The same state that built magnificent mosques also ran a highly organized human trafficking network. To understand the Ottoman legacy, we must see both the splendor and the suffering at its core. After the chaos of conquest, a new order emerged, the order of the administrator and the registrar. Special officials, the pençikçi, arrived to manage the sultan's share of the spoils, including human captives. Processing stations were set up in public squares or former churches, where survivors were herded and stripped of their humanity. Families were deliberately separated, men of fighting age executed, the elderly discarded. The real prize, women and children, sorted by age, health, beauty, and skills. Young boys were destined for the devshirme system, girls and women for servitude or concubinage. Each person was evaluated for their potential within the Ottoman system, their new status recorded in imperial ledgers. A beautiful woman might be sent to the sultan's harem, a sturdy boy to the janissaries. This process transformed people into commodities, their fates sealed by a bureaucratic pen. The trauma was twofold. First the violence, then the cold, impersonal erasure of identity. Eleni would not be registered as a mother, but as a nameless asset. Her children, logged separately, were officially and irrevocably severed from her. The administrative machinery was overwhelming, its dehumanization absolute. For the victims, this was a second, deeper wound, one that would never heal. The Ottoman system of enslavement was not lawless. It was justified by a sophisticated legal and religious framework. Drawing on interpretations of Islamic law, Ottoman jurists codified the right to enslave non-Muslim populations who resisted conquest. The pençik system ensured the Sultan received his share, and laws detailed how captives were divided, valued, and sold. Rules existed for treatment, but focused on preserving property, not humanity. Forced conversion, though technically forbidden, was the reality for most captives, especially women and children. By converting women and claiming their offspring, the Ottomans erased the cultural identity of the conquered in a single generation. This legal framework allowed perpetrators to see their actions as duty, not cruelty. The horror became routine, sanitized by bureaucracy and ideology. Separating families was not just logistics. It was psychological warfare. The process was public, forcing victims to witness their own destruction. Mothers watched sons taken for the janissaries, daughters for the slave market. The conqueror's cold efficiency sent a clear message: your bonds mean nothing. The trauma was profound, the memory of separation a wound that never healed. News of these horrors spread, becoming a tool of intimidation and control. Cities surrendered to avoid the fate of Constantinople, knowing resistance meant annihilation. The psychological scars outlasted the battles, haunting survivors for life. The Ottoman handling of captives was a state-run human trafficking enterprise. After sorting, the best captives went to the Sultan, boys to the devshirme, girls to the harem. The rest were sold in bustling slave markets or assigned to state workshops. Human beings were auctioned like commodities, their value determined by age, health, and skills. The logistics were immense. Caravans, convoys, and way stations moved captives across the empire. The state oversaw every step, turning conquest into a profitable economic venture. Archival records reveal the chilling normalcy of this trade: ledgers, price lists, and tax records. Human trafficking was not a secret, but a pillar of the Ottoman economy. The fate of thousands was reduced to inventory reports. The promise of captives fueled Ottoman expansion. War was a path to personal wealth. Human spoils were the most prized reward. Soldiers fought not just for victory, but for the chance to profit from the conquered. This economic incentive turned civilians into targets, rewarding brutality and discouraging mercy. The wealth from slave sales funded further campaigns, creating a self-sustaining engine of conquest. Slaves became soldiers, laborers, and producers, strengthening the state. Removing local populations weakened resistance and enabled demographic engineering. The system was brutally efficient. Conquest produced slaves, and slaves enabled more conquest. The threat of enslavement haunted entire societies for centuries. It was not a single event, but a constant danger shaping culture, folklore, and daily life. Villages hid in remote places. Vigilance became a way of life. Folk songs and stories kept the trauma alive, warning future generations. The loss of children and loved ones left wounds that echoed through time. Customs changed. Girls married young. Families lived in fear. The legacy was deep animosity and a fractured sense of identity. The psychological wounds of Ottoman rule are woven into the fabric of these nations. For captured women, the journey was one of total erasure. Stripped of name, family, and faith, she became a war prize, her body and future the property of her captor. Forced conversion severed her from her past. Her children would know only their new identity. Life in the harem or household was isolation and servitude, with rare exceptions. The psychological toll was immense: grief, trauma, and a sense of living death. The system used women's bodies as tools of conquest and assimilation. By capturing, converting, and claiming their children, the empire dissolved the identity of entire peoples. For these women, survival meant becoming a monument to their own people's defeat.